There's a reason this reached you now. Not months ago, when effort still felt productive. Not later, after another cycle of frustration and self-doubt. But exactly at the moment when trying harder stopped working. When repetition stopped sticking. When forcing focus only created resistance instead of clarity. That moment isn't failure. It's recognition. It's the point where the brain quietly realizes the system it's been obeying no longer produces results. Most people ignore that signal. They blame themselves. They push harder. They accept the label of being bad at learning. But if you're here, it means something different happened. It means you noticed the crack. The moment where effort stopped matching outcome. The moment where discipline didn't create progress anymore. This video doesn't appear before that moment, and it doesn't appear after you've given up. It appears right here, at the exact point where the old method collapses. Because real change doesn't begin with motivation. It begins when a system fails completely. You didn't lose intelligence. You weren't born behind. You didn't suddenly become incapable. You followed a blueprint designed for obedience, not understanding, and now your brain is rejecting it. That rejection is the upgrade signal. This isn't about studying more. It's about uninstalling a method that was never built for how the brain actually learns. And once you see how the trap works, you'll never be able to unsee it. So let's be precise. Let's expose the lie that locked your brain into slow learning, and then we'll replace it with a system that works with your mind instead of against it. Part 1. The lie that locked your brain. Schools don't teach you how to learn. They teach you how to obey. Right now, you think your memory is weak. You think you're bad at studying. You think smart people were just born different. They weren't. They just learned how to break the system. You never failed because you were dumb. You failed because you trusted a blueprint that was built to manufacture obedience, not intelligence. Let's be precise. In 1880, the modern classroom was modeled after factories, rows, bells, repetition, not to create thinkers, but to build compliant workers. This system survives not because it works, but because no one questions it. And what happens when you grow up in it? You learn how to pass tests, but forget everything after. You read the same line 3 times and still don't remember it. You highlight textbooks like a robot and nothing sticks. And no one tells you why. So here's the question no one asked you. What if the way you've been taught to study is the very reason you can't learn? This isn't just ineffective. It's dangerous. Because the longer you follow the wrong system, the more you start to believe the lie that your brain is broken. Let me show you how the trap works. The 3 chains that kill your brain. 1. Repetition without meaning. You were told that repetition is the secret. Just keep writing it, reading it, highlighting it. Eventually, it'll stick. But your brain doesn't work like that. The brain doesn't remember what it sees often. It remembers what feels important. Repetition without urgency, emotion, or pattern. It gets filed as noise, deleted, gone. That's why you can repeat a fact 10 times and forget it the next day. But one emotional sentence from a movie can stick in your head for 10 years. 2. Learning without retrieval. Studying has been turned into passive consumption. Read, highlight, watch. You feel like you're learning, but nothing's being tested. And here's the brutal truth. If you can't recall it without looking, you never learned it. Geniuses don't trust what they see. They test what they remember, over and over. That's why they can explain complex ideas from scratch. It's not magic. It's just the right input-output cycle. 3. Sequence over structure. The school system feeds you information in order. Chapter 1, Chapter 2, Chapter 3. Like stacking boxes. But genius-level learners don't build in lines. They build networks. They form mental webs, where new knowledge connects to old knowledge. Each idea is a node, anchored to something deeper. That's why they don't forget. Because even if one link fades, the others still lead them back to the idea. So here's the real question. What if you could rewire your brain to learn 10x faster? Not by adding more hours, but by removing the broken process. You were taught to study like a machine. Geniuses study like strategists. And in the next part, I'm going to show you exactly what they do differently. Not theories, not motivation, not vague advice. You'll learn the 3 invisible rules genius minds use to absorb, store, and recall complex ideas without burnout, overwhelm, or repetition. But before we go there, pause and look at your current learning habits. Do you cram before deadlines? Do you forget everything days after an exam? Do you reread your notes and feel like nothing's going in? Do you feel frustrated, even ashamed that you're not retaining like others? Good. That means your mind is rejecting the lie, and now you're ready to install the truth. Because the hack isn't about working harder. It's about working with the brain's design, not against it. You don't need more motivation. You need a system upgrade. Part 2. The genius learning model. You've been told genius is genetic, that some people are just gifted, but when you look closely, that myth falls apart. Most gifted students aren't smarter. They've just stumbled onto something the system never taught. The brain doesn't learn by force. It learns by design. And genius learners, whether they realize it or not, are obeying 3 invisible laws. Break these laws, and you forget everything. Follow them, and information begins to stick like instinct. Let's break them down. Law 1, the pattern rule. Your brain doesn't remember facts, it remembers patterns. You were trained to memorize data, names, dates, definitions, formulas. You were told to write them over and over like a machine. But machines store information through repetition. Brains store information through meaning. When something fits a pattern your brain already understands, it gets absorbed almost instantly. Here's the catch. The brain isn't asking, "What is this?" It's asking, "Where does this fit?" So genius learners don't memorize isolated facts. They embed new knowledge into existing frameworks. They don't learn information. They learn where it belongs. That's why a genius can learn faster. They've already built mental maps. New ideas simply click into place. This is why you can remember a movie plot after one viewing, but forget an entire textbook after 10 study sessions. One had structure, the other had raw data. Law 2, the retrieval loop. If you never force recall, you never install memory. Here's the trap. Reading is easy, watching is easy, reviewing is easy, and that's exactly why it doesn't work. Genius learners flip the process. Instead of asking, "Do I understand this?" they ask, "Can I explain this without looking?" The moment you try to retrieve something you just learned, and your brain struggles to find it, that's where the real learning begins. That's what we call desirable difficulty. It's uncomfortable, but it forces your brain to reorganize the data for survival. Survival equals retention. This is why active recall beats passive review 100 to 1. Because when you feel the tension of trying to remember, your brain prioritizes that information. Geniuses are not smarter. They just practice forgetting so they can build deeper remembering. Law 3, the friction principle. The more something feels dangerous to forget, the harder your brain locks it in. You'll never forget how to walk, how to breathe, how to avoid fire, because your brain encoded it through friction, intense sensory or emotional data. Genius learners use this same principle intentionally. They don't just learn passively. They inject urgency, emotion, and even contradiction into the process. They ask, "Why does this matter? What's at stake if I forget this? What is the dark side of this idea? How would this information change someone's life or destroy it?" That emotional tagging burns the information into your mind. It creates neural priority. Without friction, learning slides off the surface. With friction, it sticks like instinct. Here's how these laws look in action. Let's say you just learned a psychological concept like confirmation bias. A typical student would read it, maybe highlight the definition, then forget it 2 days later, but a genius learner would do this instead. Pattern rule. They'd link it to something familiar. This is like when people argue online and ignore facts that go against their belief. Retrieval loop. They'd close the book and try to explain it to themselves out loud. If they fail, they reopen the book, correct themselves, and try again. Friction principle. They'd emotionally tag it. If I don't understand this bias, I might fall for manipulative arguments and destroy my judgment. That's one idea. Locked in. Forever. The system never taught you this. For a reason. Why aren't students taught this on day 1? Why are they still copying notes and rereading definitions in 2026? Because the system isn't built for mental freedom. It's built for repetition, not retention. Compliance, not creativity. But now you've seen the model. You've seen how geniuses break the mold. And now, you're going to install it. In part 3, I'll show you the daily protocol. In Part 3, I'll show you the daily protocol. But before we move to Part 3, this matters. 2026 will not reward motivation. It will reward trained minds. If you consume content but don't change behavior, you stay average. Information without execution creates illusion, not power. That's why the Whisper Training Bundle exists. This is not content, this is conditioning. What changes in 2026 with this bundle? Daily mental protocols that overwrite weak defaults. Social intelligence training that removes nervous reactions. Emotional control drills that stop impulsive damage. Identity restructuring that deletes old patterns, confidence built through behavior, not affirmations. Silent discipline systems that compound daily. You don't feel different. You operate differently. No motivation, no hype, no inspiration loops, just training. Lifetime access, all future trainings included. No subscriptions, no repetition. If 2025 was observation, 2026 is execution. This is where you stop watching. This is where you start becoming. Now we go to Part 3. Link is in top comment. Wait, Part 3. The 5-Minute Genius Learning Protocol. You've seen the lies, you've learned the laws. Now it's time to rewire your brain. This is not a trick, not a motivational ritual. This is a structured cognitive training loop used by elite learners, intelligence analysts, memory athletes, and yes, outliers who never need to study twice. It takes just 5 minutes, but it activates every principle you just learned. Structure over sequence, retrieval over review, friction over familiarity. This is the Genius Learning Protocol. Run it right after exposure to new information. Let's build it step by step. Minute 1, the void recall. Close the book, kill the input. Now, rebuild from zero. Shut off all inputs, no notes, no prompts, no slides, no help. Now recall everything you just learned. Speak it aloud, write it down, sketch it. Doesn't matter how, it just has to come from inside you. This isn't just recall. This is forced pattern reassembly. You're telling your brain, this matters enough to rebuild from nothing. Even if you forget half of it. Perfect. That's where learning actually begins. Minute 2, the emotional tag. Memory without emotion is a ghost. It passes through, it doesn't stay. Pick one powerful idea from what you just learned. Now hit it with friction. Ask, why is this dangerous to ignore? How could this change someone's life or destroy it? Where in my life have I seen this play out? What is the hidden power of this idea? You're adding emotional voltage. Neurons that fire with emotion wire faster. This turns the idea from an abstract sentence into a felt experience, and felt experiences are almost impossible to forget. Minute 3, the connection loop. The brain remembers what's connected, not what's repeated. Pick one thread from what you just learned. Now force a link. Ask, where else have I seen this before? What from my life matches this structure? Which previous concept does this build upon or contradict? You are creating mental anchors. This is how genius-level learners build mind maps, where each idea becomes a portal to others. New info doesn't float away, it locks in by attachment. The more connections, the harder it is to forget. This is why people remember stories better than bullet points. Because stories are networks. Data is dust. Minute 4, the opposition test. True understanding survives contradiction. Most students stop at agreement. They memorize what's told. But genius learners stress test every idea. Ask, what would someone who disagrees say? What's the dark side of this idea? What's one situation where this might fail? Could the opposite also be true? This builds cognitive depth. It forces your mind to not just store the idea, but own it from all angles. Information that survives contradiction becomes bulletproof. Minute 5, the rebuild loop. Now prove you own it. Final step, everything off, no peeking. Now teach the concept, out loud, from scratch, as if someone's life depends on it. Not soft summaries. Precise, structured, fluid. The goal isn't perfection. It's mental articulation under pressure. Why? Because explaining is the highest form of retrieval. It forces clarity, structure, and fluency. Your brain goes from holding the idea to operating it. Why this works? This 5-minute protocol is not a study tip. It's a neurological training loop. Each minute activates a different memory mechanism. Part 4, how to make learning automatic. Environmental triggers for brain mastery. You now have the protocol, but if you leave it as a habit, you'll lose it. If you build it into your environment, it becomes permanent. This is the part no one talks about. Why do people still fall back into bad learning behaviors even after discovering powerful tools? Because their environment is silently training them in reverse. Your phone, your desk, your daily schedule, the way you take notes, even the way your browser is set up. All of it is a silent tutor. And if it's not aligned with genius-level learning, it's pulling you backward, without permission. Let's change that now. Environmental upgrade. 1. The learning altar. You need a sacred zone where deep encoding happens, a space with one purpose, to install ideas into your nervous system. This is not a study desk. This is not about posture and lighting, it's about conditioning. Designate one small space, desk, chair, mat, corner of a room, no scrolling, no multitasking, only one activity, running your 5-minute genius protocol. Why? Because location repetition activates context-dependent memory. Your brain begins to associate that exact spot with mental structuring. After just 2 weeks, you'll notice sitting in that space automatically triggers recall mode. Your brain gets faster before you even start. This is how elite performers use location to train state. It's not woo-woo, it's neuropsychology. Environmental upgrade. 2. Frictionless. Recall triggers. Most people only practice retrieval when forced. That's why their recall stays weak. You're going to flip that. You're going to install environmental cues that trigger spontaneous recall. Example, sticky note on your laptop. Recall. What did I learn yesterday? Lock screen prompt. Name one core idea from this week. Bathroom mirror. Rebuild one concept before brushing teeth. Why this works? These are low-resistance mental workouts. They take 30 seconds, but they keep retrieval pathways hot. It's like micro-reps for your brain. They compound. Environmental upgrade. 3. The out loud zone. Here's the hack. Genius learners don't just think silently. They verbalize understanding. Why? Because when you speak out loud, you hear the gaps. You're forced to structure. You realize what you don't know. Set up a space, mirror, camera, or private room. Once a day, walk into it and say, I'm going to explain one thing I learned today without notes. That's it. Even 60 seconds activates fluency training. And over time, your articulation will destroy any student who needs a script to sound smart. Environmental upgrade 4. The contradiction wall. One of the most powerful recall accelerators? Forced opposition. Print one big page that says, what would the opposite argue? Where does this idea fail? What assumption am I making? Stick it on your wall, your laptop, your workspace. Every time you review an idea, glance at that page. Ask those questions. What you're doing is called memory fortification. You're preparing your knowledge for battle, not just storing it, but stress testing it. This makes your recall sharp, defensive, and multidimensional. Environmental upgrade. 5. The archive system. Most people's notes are a graveyard. Ideas go in, never come back out. Genius learners use living archives. That means notes are structured by principle, not chapter. Ideas are color-coded by type, psychology, strategy, behavior, etc. Each entry ends with a question, can I rebuild this from memory? You can do this digitally or by hand. But the goal is to revisit, not reread. Make it your default. I don't read my notes, I respond to them. The rewired daily flow. Now combine all of it. Here's what a genius-level daily learning setup could look like. Morning, 2 minutes. Sticky note recall. Name one thing from yesterday. Midday, 5 minutes. Genius protocol. Run it on today's new insight. Evening, 1 minute. Out loud articulation. Speak one idea to yourself from memory. Weekend, 15 minutes. Archive update. Restructure one concept with emotion, contradiction, and recall cues. That's under 30 minutes per day. And yet, the cognitive return is exponential because you're no longer learning like the masses. You're installing intelligence by design. Even the best protocol fades if your environment works against you. It's not your willpower that makes learning permanent. It's the systems around you. Weak environments demand motivation. Intelligent environments make mastery automatic. In Part 5, we'll show you how to apply this to real-world skills. You'll see how to rebuild your identity through learning, not just remember ideas, but become someone new. Part 5, Becoming the Genius, Rewiring Identity Through Learning. You've built the protocol. You've structured the environment. Now we enter the final layer, the one no school, no teacher, no textbook will ever show you. Because this isn't about information anymore. It's about who you become. Let me ask you something dangerous. What would happen if your identity evolved every time you learned something new? Most people treat learning like a task. Smart people treat it like transformation, but genius-level minds, they treat learning like weaponization, like identity engineering. Every piece of knowledge upgrades their entire operating system, and that's the final hack. You're not just hacking your brain to learn faster. You're using learning to rewrite who you are. Identity is not fixed. It's trained. You weren't born with a learning style. You weren't cursed with bad memory. You weren't destined to be average. Those are all side effects of identity loops created by school conditioning. Think about it. The kid who's told he's a slow learner becomes one. The girl who scores high on one test becomes gifted and starts fearing failure. The student who struggles early stops trying altogether because failure becomes familiar. You've been trained to wear labels instead of building systems, but now you know better. How to build a learning-based identity. Every time you install a new piece of knowledge with the Genius protocol, you're not just storing it. You're upgrading the kind of person who stores information that way. It starts with one simple shift. Stop asking, "What did I learn today?" Start asking, "Who did I become by learning this?" Let's walk through it. Identity Rebuild 1. From student to architect. Students wait for instructions. Architects design their own structures. Every time you use the 5-minute loop, you're telling your brain, "I build my knowledge. No one feeds it to me." This single shift ends the dependency on external systems. You no longer study to pass, you study to construct. That makes your brain more active, more powerful, and more deliberate. Identity Rebuild 2. From repeater to pattern maker. Most people copy what they hear. Geniuses create new frameworks. After running the protocol, take one extra step. Turn the idea into your own language, your own metaphor, your own diagram or story. This activates creative encoding. It doesn't just strengthen the memory, it gives you authority over it. You now own that idea like a tool, not a fact in your head, but a weapon in your hand. Identity. Rebuild 3. From consumer to transmitter. Here's the final transformation. You are no longer the one who receives. You're the one who passes it on. Teach one concept daily, even if it's to a wall, a camera, your reflection, or a stranger online. When you teach, you shift into transmission mode, and your brain prioritizes ideas that get used. Because unused knowledge dies. Transmitted knowledge multiplies. You're not just learning for yourself anymore. You're becoming a source, a node, a generator of insight. And when that identity installs, your brain starts working differently. You won't even be able to forget, because you'll be living the ideas, not just remembering them. This isn't just a brain hack, it's a blueprint for dominance. Let's be honest, most people don't want this kind of power. They want quick tips, easy tricks, one-time hacks. But you just rebuilt the foundation of your intelligence. You now have a system that makes memory automatic, an environment that pulls intelligence out of you, a protocol that upgrades you in 5 minutes, a mindset that treats learning like self-reconstruction, and a daily loop that installs mastery like code. This isn't study advice. This is mental warfare. You've left the system behind, and now you are the system. Here's what you do next. Pick any topic you care about. Run the 5-minute Genius protocol on it. Comment below what changed, then do it again and again and again. Soon, people will ask how you remember so much, how you learn so fast, why you sound so clear. Don't explain it, just smile and tell them, "I hacked my brain."
Remember, if I die, it wasn't an accident. Follow man's hubs.